Student Affairs and Higher Education in the Department of Educational Leadership at Indiana University, where he is also Indiana State. Where he is the Lotus Delta Kaufman Distinguished Professional. Specifically, he has taught program evaluation, campus environments, and a research seminar for doctoral students. Additionally, he's been writing and making conference presentations about social class for over 10 years. His book, which you can get right outside, Social Class on Campus, was published in 2011, and his blog of the same name gets more than 2,000 page views each month. The blog he developed with students, Project First Gen in Student Affairs, has had over 17,000 page views in its 2.5 year existence. He is also a frequent speaker on social class issues at faculty and staff development events, but unfortunately, he only has 482 followers on Twitter. So let's see if we can help him out today. His current projects include work on the phenomenology of social class and multinational, multicultural perspectives on social class and social stratification. When asked about his perspectives on social class code switching by the Character Clearinghouse, he responded, quote, "Living in a multicultural society, like a multilingual one, means the ability to work within multiple cultures. And this is a good thing. I don't think that majority students are learning to work with other social class groups, much less with ethnically different students, or even to cope effectively with gender." His keynote this afternoon will undoubtedly touch upon these concepts, as well as others that are pivotal to educating college students to be fair and equitable in the world in which they will be. His students also insisted that we include that he is an avid fan of Hawaiian shirts. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. William.
So I am just delighted to be here. When I got the invitation to come to the conference, it was a thrill. It's been on my agenda for a very long time, and circumstances have prevented me from coming. Because this is a serious conference with serious people and serious discussion. I'm going to do what I can to change that a little bit, but we'll see what we see. They promised me that if the technology fails, I can do this in interpretive dance. So I've been working on gray steel. Okay, now we got to work. I'm going to sneak up on you with humor and make you uncomfortable. So don't worry about that. I've got a warning. So I'm just delighted to be here, and then I saw the schedule. So I got to go after Claire Cady, who is a fabulous presenter. I got to go after Sandy Ashton, who's like the great and powerful. Okay. Then I got to go after Sean. Okay. And then Dalton is presenting. Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here. That being said, I want to walk through. I have a ton of slides. I love multimedia, but walk through basically the idea of the phenomenology of social class and where it comes from, because it comes from inside our head, largely. And we'll talk about lots of different perspectives, but it really does matter how you think about social class, because that defines what we do, that defines our perceptions. So that is critical. And I'm indebted to Jason Laker, who reminded me that you have no agency for anything unless you have a language for it. And so I want to spend some time building a language about social class. And it would be so wonderful if you could go to Wikipedia and say, okay, social class is, but you can't, because it's really, really, really complicated. One of the underlying, okay, I'm going to break out an interpretive dance. One of the underlying themes, and I love this movie by Guy Ritchie, change the rules on what controls you, and you will change the rules on what you can't control. Social class controls our lives in so many ways, and we will explore a lot of those today. So I want to talk about the con, and those of you involved in retention should understand at least this first slide, that when the mark becomes sufficiently invested, you've got a partner. When the con is challenged, the mark feels personally challenged and feels that their intelligence is challenged. We're bringing that up, by the way. The mark will seek to defend the con and thus his or her own intelligence. Mr. Ponzi. We defend a system because we created it. We, you, me, have created social class. And so as I talk about social class, I'm going to try and challenge the ways in which we think about it. And pay attention to your defense. Pay attention to what you don't like about what I say. Because I'm all about dialogue. We'll be here later. We'll chat. And this is a long quote. I tell my students, never, 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 never put long quotes. So, but this is Carl Rogers. Any experience which is inconsistent with the organization of the structure of the self may be perceived as a threat. That's what I'm going to do with you. The more these perceptions there are, the more rigidly the self-structure is organized to maintain the self. We defend ourselves when our social class worldview is threatened, because it is a dominant worldview and it's so wonderfully quiet and so subtle and so filled with misbeliefs. The first misbelief is that social class is money. When you start to talk with people about social class, it inevitably starts at money. And as all good disinformation, that's partly true. It is not to be forgotten. Having money, not having money are vital and clear. But thinking that social class is about money is the same as thinking ethnicity is about skin color. It's partially true. So money inequity in the United States is huge. As citizens, we should be embarrassed by this chart. This is a national shame that 20% of families have incomes below $28,800. Not surprisingly, that number has not gone up a lot in the last 20 years. 95% of families make less than $217,000. So, where's the middle class? All this new dialogue on the middle class. Let's have the middle class budget. Let's have the middle class agenda. Okay, let's interrogate what the politicians mean by middle class. And let's interrogate what the politicians mean when they talk about let's support business. Are they talking about, oops, that was a bad thing to do. Are they talking about business? And are they talking about the middle class? We need to explore this. We need to be clear, but economic capital is part of social class. It's way more than that, and we'll explain that in a few minutes. So what about the family in which mom drives a long-haul truck and dad's a nurse, and combined, they make an income of $125,000? Are they in the upper middle class? Yes? No? Maybe? I was going to say yes, they're in the upper middle class. Well, if you're just using money, yeah, they're in the upper middle class. So already you begin to understand the inadequacies of the way in which we normally think about social class. The performance of social class can get very expensive. Somebody buys these positional goods. Okay, how many in here have designer handbags? For whom is this a positional good, or, oh, just it's a nice bag? We had the argument earlier over, what's your fashion style?
Oh, you knew immediately. Vera Bradley.
Vera Bradley. I'm Levinger. So we have had an ongoing fight. And flash them at each other. It gets expensive to find the positional goods in order to demonstrate your social position. Shoes, ties, oh wait, almost everything can be seen as class. When you begin to think about class as money, you begin to look at education in very different ways. As much as I love blaming Ronald Reagan for the downfall of American education, it's something that we've all contributed to. And now people are looking at this analysis of, well, what are the lifetime earnings if you get X degree? In my state, in Indiana, the community college system is relatively new. They took a perfectly good voc tech system and turned it into a community college system where everyone needs a degree. Let's talk about the reality of economics, but it's advertised as price and employability. The role and function of education has been economized. This is all about economic capital, not what you learn, but what you can earn. The second standard social class misbelief is that social class is socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status is a standard demographic they use in lots of research. Pharmaceutical companies are now being very responsible. They're not only asking gender when they begin to do clinical trials, who would have thought it? They're asking about educational attainment, and they're asking about occupational prestige. Those two, educational attainment and occupational prestige, were first developed by Hollingshead in the Hollingshead 4-factor and then the Hollingshead 2-factor. But this is a classic way of doing things. About 4 years ago, the Department of Education and the National Center for Educational Statistics put together the expert panel and said, is there a better way to measure this? And they ran all the analysis and they did a meta-analysis and discovered that, nope, this is actually pretty good. You can add in a zip code if you would like, because we all choose to live in price point neighborhoods. And that's fairly new, but basically with these two, you can establish socioeconomic status, which is not social class. But let's look for a minute at educational attainment in the United States. These numbers are a little old, but doesn't change that much. So where's the middle class? That would be the middle class, right? High school education. Where are you on this list? Right? You in the middle? Y'all middle class, according to this? Are you in the top 11%? Who has a master's degree or higher? Who will have a master's degree or higher? Yeah! Welcome to the Rich People Club! or not. When is this in the middle of any distribution? When is that middle class? So educational inequality is a fact of life. It's about access, it's about who goes. Let's go back to this slide. Who goes to college? College, it's hard to get the numbers on how many first-gen students there are in college. But a good estimate is 25%. So 75% of our students come from, oh wait, this group. 75% of college students come from 31% of the population. That's like not fair. Now, the wonderful thing about Florida, there are many wonderful things about Florida. I'm going to become a resident because I need an address. There's no record. Part of your funding formula is on attracting and retaining and graduating first-generation students. My campus, we're the third tier in the state. We're 45% Pell Grant, 55% first gen, but our metric is graduation rate. And we're put up against IU, where everyone is white, bright, and uptight. It's true, look it up. They complain in a state of Indiana, which is 8.8% African American. Well, they're hard to attract. My campus is, I think this fall, 24% African American, because we actually try. So educational attainment and access are incredible issues. But not only who goes to school and who graduates, it's where do you go to school. The growth in the state university system is profound. More and more big schools. What was it, 101 schools over 20,000? Is there a private school that even close to 20,000? Private colleges in the United States are the elite, high prestige, and very limited resource. So it's who goes to college, where you go to college, who graduates. So educational attainment is really complex when you begin to look at it. There's a lot of restrictions. What about occupational prestige, right? Educational attainment, occupational prestige. This is what the professoriate thinks of ourselves, right? We're dashing and gorgeous and wonderful. Hey, let's go steal some artifacts from some other country. Occupational prestige is largely a fiction. We just made this stuff up. Very stable across countries and very stable across time. occupational prestige. Who gets more prestige? So the National Opinion Research Center, all kinds of groups go out and regularly say, okay, of this list of 800 occupations, where would you rank whom? So if you're a professor, teacher, college administrator, student affairs professional, you're in the top for occupational prestige, right? That's what the data says. The simple and easy SES measure hides a larger and darker truth about social class. I had to do this. It wasn't a choice. The larger and darker truth is just much more complicated than educational attainment, occupational prestige, and money. So let's get a reality check. Well, first off, let's explore what this idea of social class really is. And let's find out, is it real? Well, that's an interesting question. Is it real? So, the idea is that social class is a theory of things. Anthony Bourdieu in 1987 wrote very eloquently, well, for a French sociologist, eloquently. It's wonderful, the article goes on and on and on. It's like diagram it out. But essentially, social class is a theory of things. It's a thing of theory. It is not a thing of reality. We just made this up. And we made this up inside my head, and inside your head, and inside your head. Because this is what our brains do. They make theories about how the world works. So we begin to understand a little complexly how social class works. You can think that social class is internal. It's just inside us. It's my problem. It's phenomenological, et cetera, et cetera. Or it's just out there. One of the problems, of course, when it's out there is we treat it as though it's out there. One of the problems we treat it as in here. We don't understand that it's co-constructed. It's both real and abstract at the same time. We make it so. Purses and money are the external evidence of an internal process. We have to understand how this stuff comes out and how we, you, me, in this moment, co-create and co-evolve social class. And it is co-evolve because you look in any social class group and there's all, no matter how closely you look, there's social structure, right? Professors. We fight so much because the stakes are so low. I'm in college of education. Thank God for phys ed. We got somebody to look down on. Okay, you laugh, but that's funny. It's true. There is a hierarchy. Even among faculty who are high prestige. We hate lawyers because they have more prestige. We hate physicians because they have more prestige. But I hate phys ed because, like, we're education. Because at least we're not phys ed. And physicists look down on us. Well, they look down on everybody, except the mathematicians who think that all is math. We co-create and co-evolve these hierarchical structures based on whatever meaning we want. If you want to build it on money, okay, you get a hierarchy based on money, and your solutions become money solutions. When we think that social class is external, then our response is external. Here's more money to go to college. Fine. How do we do that? That's just sensible. People do need money. College is hideously expensive and getting more and more hideously expensive. But economic inequality is external and it is internal and it is critical and it's part of social class. So often social class discussions are about the marginalized. They're not about social class. It's complicated. It involves everybody. It is not to take away from the criticality of students who are food insecure or housing insecure or psychologically insecure that they don't fit on campus. The economic culture and social capital, those three things, remember this will be on the test. Economic, cultural, and social capital and their meaning are both external and internal. I had a conversation with a student the other day. He, passing, said, oh, if I had like $400,000, I could live really well for a long time. And I had the discussion and said, well, that'll give you $15,000 a year. Well, what? I said, well, you expect an ROI of 5% and you don't want to touch principal. He said, it's my money, I can spend it. The meaning of money is different to me than it was to Danny. So, not just money, but the meaning of money. In my social class, it's authentic that you never touch principal. But that's my social class group. So the meaning I construct comes from the background I have. So let's start with exploring social class in some interesting ways. Social class is personal. It really is personal. So, audience participation moment. What social class do you belong to? I've worked with groups like this before. Nobody's going to raise their hand. Everyone's guilty. Because if you're in the upper social class, you don't want to admit it. How many of you feel lower middle class? And so what? Let's be proud of that. How many of you feel middle class? How many of you are upper middle class? This is wonderful. I just showed you data that shows that you're all liars. Yep. All just didn't pay attention, did you? Oh wait, social class is more than educational attainment and occupational prestige. You are among the most well-educated people in the United States and the elite educated on the planet. Get over it. You're the ruling class. You make and enforce the rules, basically, don't you? So, don't pick on Charlie. He's hidden in my classes. Remarkable student. So, you pick the rules on what does a resume look like. That's the rule you make and enforce. Good for you. Who died and made him in charge? Florida State. So, you now understand that even in your own head, in spite of the data, your feelings of social class are personal. So yes, social class is education, it is occupation, and it is personal. Do the facts change how you think about social class? Remember my warning at the beginning. You're defending yourself. No, but I'm not upper class. Yes, you are. The data tells me you are. Absolutely clear. No question that you are in the upper class. Well, why don't you feel that way? Well, because it's complicated. Because social class is also about identity. We have a social class of origin. We have a current felt social class, and we have an attributed social class. So what socioeconomic status really is what other people think of you. It's an attributed social class. Oh, you're a graduate student. Oh, you're a doctoral student. Oh, you're a professor. Oh, you're a full professor. Oh, you're a named professor. It is garbage that we give to each other. We attribute each other to a social class based on whatever we think is important. We have a current felt social class, and what you were answering when you raised your hand was your current felt social class. And we all have a social class of origin. We all came from somewhere. Much of the discussion about first-generation students is really a discussion around identity. We'll explore this in a minute. So, when we're young, we develop identities. So, were you ever young? Good question for an audience. You get positive response. You were young. We were all young. When we were young, we learned how to girl and we learned how to boy. We learned who we were and who we weren't. Differentiation and identification. We learned our ethnicity, what we were, and the way in which we were, whatever ethnic group you are, and what you were not. You learned what religion you were and what religion you were not. You learned what social class you were and what social class you were not. And now you go to college and get a graduate degree and wait, you become who you were not. We know a little bit about gender transformation. We're aware of that. But imagine the large number of people who go through social class identity transformation. We're going to talk about that. We expect them to assimilate. Gotta love Malcolm X. We ask them to assimilate to our system, the system that we create. We don't always respect social class of origin because of the books we read, the art we see, the music we listen to reflects a certain notion of class. And we want to help others join our class. Wait, let's talk about cultural imperialism, class imperialism. On the other hand, that's our job as educators. So we're kind of stuck in a weird place with social class and social class transformation. But this is very real. I have never experienced social class transformation. I was born late like this. Well, without the paper. Okay, later. How many of you are native to the college, to the social class that means, besides me? Any natives? And I see somewhere there was a young woman who was 4th gen. Yeah, okay. How many of you are imports? Well, that's an interesting transformation. Our social class of origin may not match what and where we are at the moment. And I will get this a little bit later about Misty and Marquee majority. I love walking around campus and looking for Misty and Marquee majority. What do they wear on this campus? Oh, let me guess. Black yoga tights or pants, North Face. They carry a really big bag with is this an Apple campus? They'll carry Macs. Oh yeah, because they're like coming pink, you know. It's a classist joke. You let me get away with that? I told you I'd make you angry. So we need to achieve some class consciousness about who's here and who's different and how they're different. And understand how we see social class. Often in an instant, we meet somebody, we understand their gender. We understand maybe something about their ethnicity, and we for sure understand a lot about their social class. One of my favorite actors. So what social class is Danny Trejo? With that gorgeous face. God, I want to look like that. Ever seen him in movies? Yes. Not yet, they don't. I do love that. So here's this very well-to-do actor playing Matete, which is fascinating. So our class consciousness needs to be part of our everyday experience. We need to tune in to what am I projecting? Oh, is that Dooney at work? That Florsheim shoes? Did y'all notice Sean's shoes today? God, they were wonderful. Well, why didn't you? Tailored suit. The man is so smooth, he walks on the sidewalk and there's no wrinkles. And he's just like, wonderful. I've known him for a long time, and just fabulous. But we've got this perceptual set that each of us have. We see what we want to see. We hear what we want to hear. I'm trying to tune your eyes a little bit differently, see something differently, and see different things. So this is from the fabulous movie that nobody watched except me, The Point. It's absolutely wonderful. You can find it on YouTube. This is the Rock Man, who makes the point that you see what you want to see. Do you see class every day? Yeah, you do. Do you see class consciously every day? Oh, now we're talking about class consciousness. Do you see gender every day? You're talking about gender consciousness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But somehow, class consciousness, well, polite people don't talk about that, you know. Well, in my family, we don't talk about class. I can pick on that. I grew up in Ivy League, New England. I knew William Buckley, but William Buckley could do William Buckley, you know. I mean, really. That's a classist joke. You gonna let me get away with this shit? So social class is personal, it's perceptual, it's cultural. We grew up with a set of rules and norms. And we normalize certain kinds of behavior. Oh, you're normal. Oh, you're not. So we have a new club here. We're calling Not Like Other People. There are dozens of us, literally dozens. Oh wait, no, we're not like other people, but we're like, you know. So think about the hipster movement, the hippies, goths, the rejection of mainstream culture is about culture and the rejection of culture and the awareness of culture. And social class is culture. If you really think about it, it's a collection of subcultures arranged in a hierarchy of prestige. I grew up in New England. Boston was the South. New York was the Deep South. Then there was like Central America. That would be, you see what you want to see. When Jimmy Carter became president, one of my favorite presidents for a number of reasons, there were any number of shows that people from the South no longer had an accent. I did. It's a changing perspective. It's a change in what is prestige. I lived in Boston for a while. You know, they Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers? Yeah, they sound like morons, don't they? That accent is not a prestige accent. They went to that technical school in Cambridge. What was it, MIT? Yeah, they were smart guys, but they didn't have the prestige accent. I chose my parents really well. White rich people. So that's a collection of cultures, but with whom do we share this? This is my Easter egg. I love when I come up with this line. This is my son, daughter, and wife, my daughter. So this will make me feel good, so don't worry about it. But the question is, with whom do we share our cultures? Well, we tend to share our cultures with our families, with our friends, with our neighbors, with the people we go to school with. Birds of a feather. Homophily is a wonderful thing. So who do we share our culture with? People like us, except for those of us who are not like other people. Wait, now there are two of us who are not like that. Yeah, I'm just really confused. But we share cultures, and social class is culture. It's a set of cultural assumptions. There's kind of large-scale cultural assumptions among the upper middle class group, the ruling class, all of us. We have certain assumptions. Some of them are okay, and some of them are dangerous. But what happens, though, is then there's us and them. I spent most of my life as them. I kind of like it. But I'm normal, I'm not so sure about. Us and them. My team, your team. There's another state university that y'all hate, right?
Yes.
Yes, of course there is. Because they're idiots, they're them. Us, our football team, basketball team, faculty administration campus is better. Our culture, my social group, my class, the Duty and Burke Owners Association, the BMW Drivers Association, they're just Honda. But we do this with culture, and social class is culture, and there are cultural assumptions that we share until we start to say that, no, there is no us and them, it's just all we. People ask me, where are you from? I go, Earth. Okay, that's going to be out in the sweet verse in a moment. Because the degree to which we separate ourselves from others is the degree to which we disenfranchise them, and by doing that, disenfranchise ourselves. When you seek to make someone special, you've diminished yourself. When you seek to make yourself special, you've diminished others. This is a bad thing. So let's talk about the ruling class. Oh, that would be us. The human aggregate. Yeah, so we're on campus. No, we're at Florida State campus. That's the good campus, not the other campus. Or one of those regional campuses. Oh, really? A regional campus? Really? We have these pictures in our head. We stack these things up in terms of prestige. We just do this. And we reinforce it, those of us in the ruling class. So who is the campus human aggregate? The majority. John talked today about white people. Loved it. It's wonderful. The problems with race in America are white people. On behalf of all white people, I'm sorry. I'm going to take my white privilege and do that. That's funny. Come on. The human aggregate is the majority social class group on campus. People seek to fit in. And I'm extremely concerned about Misty and Marquee majority. Students who are not in the majority, they know it. They experience cultural contrast the minute they walk on campus. Oh, these are not my people. Whether they're on the low end or the high end, people will seek to normalize, blend in, class pass. How many of your faculty are first generation? I love that question. I love it because everyone goes, what? Aren't they all like old rich people? Oh, about 12 years ago, I was doing a piece at the Ohio State University. The president at the Ohio State, and you know they're special because they've got a the. I did my doctorate at the University of Iowa. We got a memo every year just to make sure we all knew how special we were because we had an article in front of the university. And at the Ohio State, the president had sent a note out to the faculty wanting to know how many faculty were themselves first generation and to tell a little bit of their story to him. And the email box became full for the president because it was such an outpouring. And everyone was amazed at the large number of faculty who were themselves first generation. So there's so much pressure to class pass, to conform, to become part of us, not them. Because we marginalize first gen. They're special. One of the things we do on my campus, I make the suggestion that people do the work. This is my job. Just like, hey, you all should do this. And Claire does the same thing, except she actually does it, so I don't know all. As I went to my vice president and said, hey, Jack, you know, let's do something with faculty who are themselves first gen and willing to out themselves as first gen. And set up mentoring programs with first-gen students so that students can see someone like them. Because we don't wear tags. Well, I do because, like, I'm rich. Well, that's fun. But everybody walks around campus with some assumptions and attributions of the social class of the other people on campus. And this has turned out to be a really good, strong program. Now I know, having a chat today with, and I'm sorry I've forgotten his name already, one of your people in academic affairs, that this campus is exceptionally good at working with first generation students and being inclusive. You know, we're trying on my campus, we're beginning to understand, we're beginning to build stuff, and we steal the best ideas from schools like this that are successful. How to work with this, and how to bring class out into the open and into the discussion and into the classrooms. Because in many ways, college is a confirmation experience or it's a conversion experience. Both of these have really odd overtones. I went to college in 1968. Yeah, I'm really old. We had, in loco parentis, we had visitation hours. We did not have to dress formally for Sunday dinner anymore. That was nice. But for me, it was a confirmation experience. There was not a lot of diversity on my campus in terms of social class. We had gender diversity. It was the beginning of a lot of wonderful things going on. very active groups from within, very active groups from all kinds of stuff. It was a fabulous day. But it was essentially for me a confirmation experience that I was normal and everyone else was like me. For other students, college can be a conversion experience. How do we, with justice, teach people the secret narrative of social class and respect their social class of origin? That's tough. How do we get the faculty not to denigrate cowboy poetry and to only have Robert Frost or Langston Hughes as good poetry? So college has a variety of things. It's a classing experience in a lot of ways. That can be confirmational or conversion. Okay, class is also cultural capital. Kind of portable wealth, stuff you know, experiences you had. You can wear like the class ring to do. I've got this cultural capital. I'm wearing my garnet and gold ring. So, wait a minute. Now there's multiple ways to be rich and poor. There's economic. There's cultural ways to be rich and poor. Well, rich and poor because we make certain kinds of culture, rich culture, prestige culture. Oh, you need to read these books. You need to look at this art. You need to listen to this music. Well, maybe. And part of our job on campus is we are the conservators of history. That's what we do. And y'all should know this stuff. And y'all should know the world's history. But we don't always say it that way. There's I can't remember if the quiz was on BuzzFeed or some wonderfully authentic internet site. But it was, can you identify these 10 paintings? And my response was, these are rich people paintings. This is high prestige cultural capital. If you don't have this high prestige cultural capital, you're cultural capital impoverished. And it's way less of a problem than being economically impoverished and being food insecure. Being culturally insecure has psychological consequences. But we really look at cultural capital as another way of being rich and poor. Part of our job is to enculturate, but part of our job is to do that socially responsibly. And the cultural capital varies by social class group. So on an elite campus, you get better cultural capital than on a state college campus. Any campus with the word state in it is instantly suspect in the prestige world. That's an interesting question. Or is it the assumption that if you go to a high prestige, Seven Sisters, Ivy League school, that whatever you learned is way cooler than what you would have learned at Oklahoma, Florida, Ohio, Indiana State? It's an interesting question. So, social class is also social. Social capital. Economic, cultural, and social capital come from the work of Pierre Bourdieu. That's a handy way to think about stuff. It takes skills to build network. The prime example of social capital wealth is sitting right here. Claire makes, I'm gonna be rude, a couple of calls. No, you made a lot of calls. You gathered people together of like mind to come and help you with the pre-conference. That is social capital. You can get people together to do important stuff. They have resources. The resources may be knowledge, might be money, might be skill, might be a pickup truck to help you move the couch. But that is social capital. She is socially rich. She's culturally rich. And she works on campus, so, well, not enough money.
Welcome to being rich. I got a master's.
That's right. So social capital is really, really important. It's a network of friends and associates who can get together for mutual benefit. Now, knowing somebody with a pickup truck to help you move is one kind of social capital. Knowing the people to get together to help you do your data analysis for your dissertation or programming, that's a different kind of social capital. It's all networking. How do you network? Well, this is a set of skills. High school leaders become college leaders. Because it's just like way easier to deal with them than the people who don't have skills. Where are we teaching social capital skills? Y'all have etiquette dinners on your campus? That's social capital training. This is the skill building experiences. So social class is inherently a hierarchy. Let's talk about academic capital. Who comes with academic capital? Well, isn't that like basically what admissions is about? You know, who's got the most likelihood of being successful on campus? Social class we construct as a hierarchy. We walk around and go, yes, no, maybe, well. Anytime it's a hierarchy, there's inherent inequality. And inequalities are hidden in plain sight, all over the place. So let's talk about college admissions. I love the Texas admission system. I, grew up in the north, so Texas, really, why bother? But they got it right in many ways. As a system, they've got diversity. It's not on the individual level, but if you graduate in, what is that believe now, the top 9% of your high school class, no matter what school you went to, you tell them which university you're going to. They got such incredibly wonderful diversity. Oh, those people from the country, they'll never do, they're really rocking the people from the country. They come to campus, they've gotten better grades, they've gotten better gender diversity, they've gotten better ethnic diversity. It's just fabulous. The system works. But it's still based on school performance, so there's some suspect stuff going on there. But it's way better than what we do on my campus, where we do score and grade standards. And we know that standardized test scores are highly correlated with parental income. If you read the GRE material, the SAT material, no, it's not about money, it's about the experiences that money can buy. Oh wait, cultural capital. So it's not economic capital, it's about what you can do with that. So we know that the best regression formulas can predict student success in the first year at about 0.42. Right? We look at grades, parental income, which is actually the only question you need on college admissions, give it a certain assumption about who's going to be successful. Standardized test scores, and we run the regression equations, and we can predict with about 0.16. So we're 84% uncertain who's going to be successful. So basically, the criteria we use are 86% uncertain. That's crap. Why do we even bother? Just like go to the doors, come on down. We'll see how you do in the first couple of semesters, then we'll talk. But we have these assumptions, class assumptions, normalcy assumptions, that the best students will be the best students from high school. How many of you were less than motivated in high school? Yeah. My brother's just back row?
Asleep in the back row, yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk. No. But we make some class assumptions, or we make assumptions that are involving some unexamined ideas about class. We look at classroom structure and interaction. There are some assumptions about power, there are some assumptions about support, and some assumptions about caste that are very classed. Very classed when we think about that in the classroom. I'm not going to tell you what they are, because you've got to figure this out. So I won't do that. But my challenge to you, how are we doing on time? Okay, yeah, I want to leave time for questions. Well, my challenge to you is very, very simple. Don't be a jerk. We need to increase our own awareness. How do I assign social class to the stuff I see, to the Dooney and Burke, to the Cross, to the North Face? What's going on inside my head? This should be your dialogue. Why do I think that's better than that? And then stop watching television. No, that's a different argument. So we need to explore in ourselves how we are constructing class. And we need to begin to see class performance in others. And then we'll begin to see class performance in ourselves. Awareness, the first step. This is my challenge. So the rest of the day, I want you to put on your class lenses, your class contacts, your class filter. How is this going in the world around you? Is it a Budweiser world, or is it a Keystone Light world, or is it one of those IPAs? What are those IPAs? But it's so cool, it's got an acronym, like, it doesn't have a name. So retro. I can only drink it ironically. So let's celebrate the beer of a colonized nation. No. So, I'm sorry, just porters, the importers. Get a stout, any beer you can spoon. This is for me. Well, why do I think that's better than other beers? Well, it's because my brand. It's normal. It's what real people drink. Second thing I want you to do is increase your knowledge, and the best way to increase knowledge is dialogue. Talk and listen, talk and listen, talk and listen. Be very open with your class story. I was asked to present at NCORE a number of years ago, and I had just worked with students to develop a set of dialogue-oriented questions. So we had people do introductions for 5 minutes in small groups, and boom, 2 hours was gone. It was wonderful. It was a highly structured dialogue. We talked to people, talk about your home growing up, the physical setting, talk about your family, talk about education, and talk about vacations. All of these are really classed notions, the way in which you took vacations. Did you take a vacation going camping because it was cheaper than rent? Did you take a vacation with friends and family because it was cheaper than hotels? Or did you take the all-American vacation to, what's it, world over here? Yeah, Disney Complex. All of these are very classed ideas, and it got people talking about social class. And, hey, you had a different background than I had. And so, dialogue. Involvement and engagement. One of the wonderful things about involvement and engagement is we often end up interacting with people who are not like us, and not like us in a lot of ways. And then to reflect on what that means for class and gender and ethnicity. Community engagement is critical. Not only out in the communities, but in the communities within the campus. Absolutely critical. Get the students talking with each other, providing support. But basically listen and share. Be willing to tell your story and explore your background. And listen to other people. Listen with an open heart and an open mind. And pay attention to your reactions when Will says you're in the ruling class. But no, I'm not ruling that. No, you're not. Your social class of origin might have been. But you're now, we co-construct the meaning of social class on our campuses. We reinforce certain things with our attitudes and our behaviors and the way in which we dress and speak and the books which we recommend and the way in which we want you to write, etc., etc. This is huge. Pay attention, please. And have some humor about it, because nobody gets out alive. I mean, come on. Enjoy the ride. That being said, ever forward. Now everyone's all depressed and angry. I told you I was going to make you angry. But we have about 2 minutes for questions, as I understand. I went to a wedding for friends a couple years ago, and they asked that people write down recommendations for a good marriage. And my favorite remains my favorite. Somebody wrote down, and an understatement with, but I might be wrong. Honey, the toast is really burned, but I might be wrong. So my attitude towards this is there are a lot of answers. I said a lot of stuff, and I might be wrong. So I think there are multiple interpretations, multiple dialogue, multiple ways to think about this. People have got to step up and begin to write and ask questions and say, Will, you're wrong here. And I'm going to say, good, where are you going to publish this? So, questions that you have. Because if you start talking, I'm going to start slipping you cards about how to get this into print. Okay, good questions that you have, please. Everyone's got class guilt.
So I guess I'll throw out a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So thinking about how there are many graduate students that are unemployed, other institutions across the nation. So how do you think this idea plays into the socialization of future hiring professionals?
That's too big, I can't do that. We're the ruling class, and the degree to which we educate each other with some sense of justice and inclusion becomes very, very, very critical for everybody. Anyone who touches a student's life has to be very aware of all of the subtleties and the overlay and the interdependence and the intersectionality. Because different ethnic groups have different ideas about class, and different classes have different ideas about ethnicity. Different genders have ideas about class, different classes have different ideas about gender. I got together with a group of colleagues a few years ago and made a student choice. I do that every day. But we were going to propose a pre-conference workshop on the intersectionality of ethnicity, gender, and class. A great group of people, pretty serious folks. And the great news is we got turned down. Because as we began to explore this before we got turned down, is we realized how hard this was going to be. So every time I try and get 2 levels of complexity, it's tough. When you get 3 levels of intersectionality, it gets wonderfully complex. So that's a good problem, dissertation topic. Or just thinking about it and writing about it. And so I think as we educate students, beginning to have this dialogue, well, how does intersectionality work with class and with ethnicity and with religion? Because it's all class. Religions are class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm sorry, I can't answer. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't know, Will. I feel like, you know, you say we're all upper class in this room, but I think there are other factors that play into it. I think there's ageism. I think there is, racism, sexism, homophobia, that all play into class. And I would say that there are people who wouldn't view everyone in this room as upper class. You know, I don't feel like there are people in this room that consider it. So maybe from one aspect, the educational aspect, but there's everything else that plays into it, so.
I don't think most of the people in this room believe that they're upper class.
No.
In spite of the data, that they are maxed out on socioeconomic status, because class is identity, it's culture, and it's so complicated.
Right.
So the class you assign yourself is the class you're in.
Well, but the class that other people assign you to. Even on a university campus, student affairs professionals are not the top of the heap.
On an extremely elite campus. Any campus, doesn't matter, you're on campus. So everyone attributes this. And when I've got faculty who think themselves to be working class and come in their flannels and work boots, dude, you got a PhD from Purdue, shut up. So I think you're absolutely right, it is complicated. The data says one thing, our sense of self says something else. That's why it's complicated. So the class you assign yourself, that's yours, and that's right.
But I think the other piece that she's saying is it's not the dichotomy between myself and the data, but there's also groups of people in the community that would say you're in a lower social economic class, so it's even more complicated than the self versus the specific data.
And we need to interrogate ourselves as why we assign class in the ways in which we do. Why is this even important? Well, it is, because we make it important every day. If this were easy, we've had this solved hundreds, thousands of years ago. There are biblical references to class. What is it? It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich person to get into heaven. Yeah, like Francis talks about that. The Pope guy. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Amber Hampton, and I work here at the Center for Leadership and Social Change. I'm wondering if this idea of social class, or how at least how I think about when I connect with students individually and talk about social class, is if it has anything to do with motivation, or some type of an aspirational aspect, or if you've explored that in some of the things that you've done. Because
Yes.
as I'm talking to students and I'm telling them about my background as a first generation college student and recent homeowner, so like, oh, I want to own a house one day, but I'm thinking, is that something you want to do, or is that something that you want to aspire to do, so that motivates you to graduate and get the job and move social classes?
Yes. I think it's deeply related with motivation, and that's not that simple, because we know the hidden injuries in class, the hidden injuries, the obvious injuries of poverty or low economic upbringing are just profound, and how that affects people's motivation. Some get angry enough to get out, some get crushed by it. Kids who are wealthy or entitled, well, my daddy's paying tuition and I want. So motivation, I think, is very much a part of this, and these are related in critical ways. Are you first, Jen?
Yes.
Okay. Ask ourselves, why are there so many first-gen people in student affairs? Right? They go to college in half the number of second-gen. They graduate in half the numbers. They go to graduate school in half the numbers. Why would there be any in student affairs? And yet, there are huge numbers in student affairs. This is why we started the blog, so we would love to have your story and anyone else's story. We had 17,000 hits. Who is interested in first-gen student affairs? Well, a lot of people, apparently. And there's a lovely collection of stories, lovely collection of motivations, a variety of reasons that people went into this. I think a lot having to do with motivation. So A, please write, and B, please look at the things that are there, do a meta-analysis, and we'll put it on the blog. And you'll be famous, you'll get internet points. I'm kind of a big deal on a really small section of the internet. We're out of time, he says. Thank you very much.